body. One would stay with the body, the other would go, could be sent back to base with effects. And the issue was he was probably buried. They probably put up a cross, or maybe not, whatever they could do. But when the time came to clear up the battlefields in 1919, they couldn't find him or find him and identify him. So in all probability, he would have been found and been brought into this cemetery and buried as an unknown soldier.
Here, so if he was an unknown soldier, where would he have ended up?
Well, what's unique about the Canadian troops is that they all wore their number on their collar, so C-27. So he would have been identified as a 27th Battalion man. And there are a number of unidentified 27ths in this cemetery. This soldier here is a 27th Battalion man that was found in Courcelette Village. And the probability is that probably about 1 in 10 that he would be your grandfather.
Wow.
As they tour the captured German trenches, Canadian officers begin to question whether a few muddy holes are worth the lives of thousands of young men. And for the first time, a few of them dare criticize British tactics. But the British commander, Sir Douglas Haig, turns a deaf ear. He has already set his sights on a new objective: the longest German trench system on the Western Front, a menace to the British hold on the Somme ridges. Overriding all objections, the High Command orders the Canadians to prepare to take Regina Trench before the winter rains can stop the fighting. Rumors filter down to the tired Canadians that something big is in the offing. In battlefield dressing stations, Canon Scott picks up on the somber mood.
The army had set its teeth and was out to battle in grim earnest. But the price we had to pay for victory was indeed costly, and one's heart ached for the poor men in their awful struggle in that region of gloom and death.
This is the valley that Regina Trench ran through. It was the longest trench on the Western Front, and it was positioned in this little gully, and it zigzagged across the front to about 1.5 miles in that direction. The advantage of being in a gully like this meant that Canadian artillery couldn't locate the position very well, and they couldn't hit the trench, so they couldn't destroy the German positions inside of it. Secondly, it was defended by heavy belts of barbed wire all across these fields here, up the rise past the cemetery. The other thing that really started to happen at this time is that the High Command, the British High Command, started to put pressure on the Canadians to keep up the attacks. And these attacks that the Canadians were making here were not properly prepared. They didn't have enough artillery, and often the wire wasn't cut, and they had very little chance of success. And it's really because of these battles that the generalship of the Canadian Corps started to lose trust in the British High Command.
As they wait to attack Regina Trench, the autumn rains begin on the Somme. The trenches and dugouts are soon knee-deep in water. Mist and rain mingle with the stench of dead men, dead mules, dead horses. In spite of its name, the Canadians' camp in Death Valley is one of the few relatively safe places near Regina Trench. Only a few dozen casualties a day, from snipers' bullets, from big guns, from mortar shells. While merely crouching in a trench, eating a meal, or lighting a cigarette, hundreds of soldiers are killed each week by weapons they never see. Their deaths are simply referred to as trench wastage.
The man was brought in who looked very pale and asked me piteously to get him some water. I told him I could not do so until the doctor had seen his wound. I went over to the table, and there I saw a sight too horrible to be described. A shell had burst at his feet, and his body from the waist down was shattered. Beyond this awful sight, I saw the white face turning from side to side and the parched lips asking for water. The man, thank God, did not suffer very acutely, as the shock had been so great. I knelt down beside him and talked to him. He was a French Canadian and a Roman Catholic, and as there happened to be no Roman Catholic chaplain present at the moment, I got him to repeat the Lord's Prayer and the Hail Mary, and gave him the benediction. He died about half an hour afterward.
After 2 disastrous failed attacks on Regina Trench, Canadian soldiers are forced to go to ground again. The season advances. It is getting colder, wetter, and muddier. But General Haig orders the Canadians to mount a new assault on Regina Trench, using double the number of battalions. The attack is set for October the 8th.
Well, on October the 8th, the Canadians along Death Valley and all across this field were supposed to capture Regina Trench. So at the jump-off time, all across these fields, the Canadians, are about probably around 3,000, 4,000 men, came out of their trenches. So the men advanced up these hills right to get to the top here. And then they're starting to get into the barbed wire. They still haven't seen Regina Trench. It's still over this little rise here. But now they're running into real trouble because the artillery didn't do what it was supposed to do, which was to cut the barbed wire. So now the Germans are manning their positions and they're shooting at them with rifles and machine guns, and they're having to go to ground. A lot of them are being killed, and it's at this point that their piper, James Richardson, decides to take the action into his hands. And he takes his pipes, as a lot of the Scottish units often had pipers attacking with them. He plays his pipes and he walks back and forth in front of the barbed wire. And it managed to encourage the men so that they can get through the wire, and they actually get into Regina Trench, which is just in this little gully down here. Richardson, for some reason, was not killed. How they missed him, I'll never know, and he went with the men into the trench. The unfortunate part was that the attack all along that side had failed completely. They didn't even get into the trench. Over here, the Toronto regiments, there's 2 of them fighting here, were successfully in Regina Trench, but Richardson's men got in, and then later that night, as the Germans started to counterattack, they had to evacuate. The men, at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, started to pull out across these fields, evacuating all their gains for the day. Piper Richardson forgot his bagpipes, or so the story goes. He returns to the trench and was never seen again.
Ordered to attack before their artillery can destroy enemy barbed wire and machine gun nests, the Canadians suffer huge losses and fail for a 3rd time to take Regina Trench. But as he withdraws with the 3 exhausted Canadian divisions, Canon Scott learns that General Haig refuses to be deterred by this 3rd failure. To renew the battle, he has ordered the newly formed 4th Canadian Division down to the Somme. In the 4th Division is a young captain yet to prove himself in battle. His name is Henry Hutton Scott, Canon Scott's 2nd eldest son.
When the 4th Division arrived to take over the line, I had the great joy of having my 2nd son near me. From my window, I could see the officers and men of his battalion walking about in their lines. It was a great privilege to have his battalion so near, for I had many friends among their ranks. Canon Frederick Scott.
Also with the 4th Division is 20-year-old Victor Wheeler. Diagnosed as having a weak heart, Victor has been told he will last no more than 3 months in the front line. Now, as he looks out over no man's land towards Regina Trench, Victor Wheeler celebrates his 2nd month in the front line.
Even before getting close to Regina Trench, we had lost 25 men killed or wounded. The incessant rains had turned the whole Somme area into a quagmire. The heavy guns thundered continuously. The earth convulsed as landmines planted 30 to 50 feet underground spawned, then exploded, shattering